Hello, everyone. In this tip of the week, we're going to address how to utilize merge paths in shapes in order to utilize shapes as masking for other shapes. That is, how to use one shape to mask out another. So for that, we're going to try to recreate this eye blink. So let's take a look at the screen really quick. And you'll notice that the eye blinks, basically. And that's what we're trying to recreate. So to do that, let's go ahead and create a new composition, and I am going to make it 1280 by 720 24 FPS. 4 seconds is more than plenty of time. What I want to do is I want to add a couple of ellipses into this particular composition. So I can either do the same thing that I've always done, which is new from the drop down menu, shape layer, and then add the ellipse to that. Under contents, go ahead and add an ellipse and add a fill to it. In this case, I'm going to change my fill color to white. Okay, and I'm going to resize the ellipse to about, let's say 350 by 350. So that's a good number. Then I am going to make a copy of this, and this becomes the sclera. That's the white part of your eye. So I'm going to call that sclera. So I'm going to select it, call it sclera. And I'm going to make a copy of the sclera, and selecting it, Control D on the keyboard, and then on the second sclera, I want to rename that one pupil, which is the black part of your eye, or the darker part of your eye. So what I want to do is I want to add a different color to that, a different operator. So I'm going to go to the flyout menu, choose a different fill. In this case, fill 2 will be just for the pupil, so I'll move it up into the stack right below the pupil, and I will go ahead and change it to, say, black. Okay, so that is the pupil, and because it was a copy, it's basically the same size as before, so I need to make that somewhat smaller. I'm gonna make it about 200 pixels. And so that's the big sclera for the white part of the eye, and that is the black part, which is the pupil. Now, what I want to do is I want to be able to blink this eye. So to do that, I need to create a merge paths operation between this pupil and a copy of the sclera that will serve as a mask. So how does that work? Well, let me go ahead and group all these things. So the sclera and the fill 1 will be one group, and I'm going to call that sclera. And then I'm going to grab the pupil and the fill 2, and I'm going to make them an object. So I'm going to make them, I'm going to group them, Control G, and I'm going to call that pupil. Then I'm going to make a copy of the sclera, Control D, and I'm going to bring that on top of the pupil. This will be, I'm going to rename this matte, because it's going to be the matte that I'm going to be using for the pupil. You'll notice that it copied the color and everything from the sclera breakdown. So on this one, what I want to do is I want to change the fill color to the color of the pupil, which was black. So this color for the fill for the matte should match the one of the pupil. I'm going to make it black. And then what I want to do is I want to group the matte and the pupil into their own group. So I'm going to select those two, Control G, and I am going to rename that group pupil masked. So that's the pupil that contains the matte and the pupil, and then the sclera is outside of that. Now, these two are shapes, so I can go ahead and add into that stack, I can add a merge paths modifier or operator. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and notice that it's below both the matte and the pupil. If it's not there, go ahead and drag it there so that it's below those two. And then I want to choose what interaction I want to happen between those two shapes. In this case, from the drop-down menu for merge paths, what I want is intersect. And basically they're intersecting, the area where they both intersect is what becomes visible. Now what I want to do is I want to go back up to the matte inside the sclera, and I want to turn that into a Bezier path. So it no longer is an ellipse, it's a Bezier path. I want to do the exact same thing to the original sclera down here. So I'm going to go into the sclera, and convert that to Bezier path. So now both the sclera and the mask are both paths instead of ellipses. And what I want to do is I want to parent that path from the matte. I want to make it a child of the sclera path. So to do that, I'll open up both paths, both for the pupil mask and for the sclera down below. And I'm going to make a child of this path right here by dragging the pick whip and selecting the other path. What that's going to do is basically this path does whatever this path does. And so because of that, and because this is now a path, I can go ahead and animate it. What that means is I can go ahead and deform it as necessary. So if I go and select the path itself under the sclera and I resize it in any way, let's click over here. Let me go select the sclera again, the path on the sclera, and deform it, then the mask that I added under the pupil will react equally. So if I go here and I keep that position, that value like this for the path for the sclera, then I go select the key, put a keyframe in there, 2 frames later, say 3 frames later, I'm gonna bring this down. Oops. Let me bring it down this way, and I don't want to close it into the center. I really want to just animate it. So I want to bring it down like this. Then I want to bring this one up a bit. Then I want to change the direction of these Bezier handles. So I'm going to switch my tool to the Convert Vertex tool. Press the Shift key to constrain and bring it down. Same thing on the other side. Make sure that you use the selection tools to select it, then switch it to your vertex tool. Bring it down, press Shift to constrain. So now that animation looks like this. Basically, the eye is closing. Then I'm going to grab that first keyframe and paste it a couple of frames after. And so the end result is this. You basically get a blink of the eye, where the merge paths basically allowed me to use the information from one path as the mask for another.